I've been coming across a sutta like few days ago. The question is suffering created by oneself? Is suffering created by another? Is suffering created by both oneself or another? Or is suffering created by neither, like just arise randomly? So I was contemplating, like the Buddha say it's neither of those basically. Yet we often say in Hillside Hermitage that you are responsible. And so I think it would be good to kind of distinguish what's the difference between being responsible and you are creator of your suffering. Because there is a kind of a difference there, but I think it would be good to...
Yeah. What's the difference between being responsible for your suffering and creating your suffering? Because there is that common view in some teachings where you would be told that kind of in the moment you create the suffering by kind of the way you direct your attention or something like that. So is that the same as saying that you're responsible for your suffering? Is that what we mean when we say that?
So maybe we should start clarifying what the suffering is, basically. So, because I think this is the most important question.
Yeah.
Go on.
I could say the root of the suffering is untamed mind.
Right, that's the root of the suffering. What is the suffering itself?
Not seeing the mind that is untamed. It's basically the same as...
That's still the root or the cause of the suffering. Like you would say ignorance is a cause of suffering. But the suffering itself, let's say like phenomenologically, without looking at something else, if you just experience suffering right now, let's say, just what is that suffering? Without overthinking it.
It's unpleasant.
Yeah, it's just an unpleasant feeling. So yes, you can think about why the suffering is there, and that's pretty much what we're going to go into. But first of all, it's important to be clear that, that's what suffering is. It's just experiencing unpleasantness.
But wait, is that the origin of the suffering?
Sorry?
Is that the origin of the suffering?
No. That's what we said. We're going to get into what the origin of the suffering is. But now we're just saying suffering in of itself, what is it? Dukkha. Just dukkha vedana, dukkha feeling, unpleasant feeling.
Okay.
So that's what it is. So that's what we're talking about. It's not some because people can get into kind of metaphysical, almost like proliferations about suffering being this and being that. But really, it's just right here and now. You feel an unpleasant feeling. There's some kind of dissonance, conflict, dissatisfaction, unhappiness.
Resistance?
Well, that would be what's causing the suffering. But the suffering itself is just, So that's what the suffering is. Now, let's say you're experiencing an unpleasant feeling on account of whatever. Can you get rid of it immediately? No. So, can you even kind of be sure that things that you will do will result in that feeling going away at any point?
No, I can't be sure.
No. So you can hope that, traveling the world and attaining all the riches in the world and getting all you want, even if you factually get what you wanted, you can hope that that will result in changing the feeling that has arisen, but it may well not happen. And that's the root of all problems in the world. It's that you have a feeling and you can't change it. So, from that point of view, it becomes quite clear that saying that you are the creator of your suffering would not be quite accurate, because if you were, you would be able to decide, and for that matter actually, if you have tamed your mind, if you have undone these origins of suffering that we're going to get into, then even if you said, I want to suffer, I try to suffer, then you wouldn't be able to, which also adds to the point that no, it's not your creation, because otherwise it would be fully under your will. So now...
it wouldn't be a problem in the first place. Then.
Yeah, exactly, because then you could decide, actually people kind of say that sometimes, they say suffering is a necessary part of life because it helps you grow, which isn't completely wrong. It's not like you're trying to be kind of in happy la la land all the time, but there will be difficulties regardless of what you do in life. But saying that pretending like it's not a problem, like it's fine, kind of implies that still that ignorant view that you fundamentally have control over it. You don't really realize that you're pretty much confined within it, and that most of the time the things you do work in changing it. But if you just contemplate, that's why the Buddha encouraged people every day, contemplate, I am liable to sickness, I am liable to aging, I am liable to death, because those are the things where an unpleasant feeling will arise, and no matter what you do, you won't be able to get rid of it. So, unless your mind is tamed. So, then you recognize, so it is a problem. It is something that I can't kind of cover it up, because factually all of my issues, all of my concerns revolve around unpleasant feeling. So now, having established that, what does it mean to say that? Because see, it could sound now as if, okay, so it's just you're subjected to it. You're kind of a victim of feeling, and I think that would almost sound as if it's randomly arisen, like it just comes on its own, or it just imposed on you by somebody else, by God or by something that you have no control over. So, but we're saying that's not the case. So what does it mean then to say that you're responsible? Practically. How would you know that, okay, I'm responsible for this feeling that has arisen? If it's not like a momentary thing that I'm just kind of, like we said, creating it in that immediate sense. What would it be then?
Well, there seems to be on a practical level, there are things that there are choices that I can make that seem to reduce my suffering. So it seems that I do have an influence.
But is it a direct influence?
Can't say for sure.
Yeah, so it depends.
Yeah.
Direct influence would be if you have trained your mind, as we were saying. But before that, practically speaking, what your well, let me not give the answer. So practically speaking, let's say what would lead to the arising of an unpleasant feeling. Not how you could get rid of it, but like just how did it come about in the first place?
So it's because one delights in what's pleasant, then when this pleasure disappears, it kind of like this dependency on pleasure like is felt unpleasantly because now the pleasure is not available anymore.
Yeah, so basically, is it correct to say that the unpleasant feeling is just the unpleasant circumstance?
No, it's more like the kind of what I build up in regard to it. What kind of because I'm so dependent on pleasure, when this pleasure disappears, I feel like what's left, quote unquote, as displeasure. But that depends on how much on my dependency on pleasure, not about the circumstance themselves.
Yeah, so in other words, you can have unpleasant circumstances, which are, like I said, sickness, aging, and death. But whether there's an unpleasant feeling felt on account of that, like dissatisfaction or that acute level of the mind being unhappy, that depends not on the situation, depends on what you have cultivated, where your mind is. So there are certain actions that you would do that would make you be hit or struck by the arrow of pain when unpleasant circumstances arise, which inevitably is going to happen. So that's why the Buddha said, I think in one sutta he said, there are contacts that are suitable for the arising of unpleasant feeling. And so when there is the kind of suitable basis, he kind of gave the simile of like two blocks of wood coming together or something like that they make a noise. It's like when the suitable conditions are there, this unpleasant contact will arouse an unpleasant feeling. So it's not talking about some kind of external relationship of the biochemistry kind of thing. No, it's that internal, like you said, situation or internal, how would you put it, climate of your own mind that you've built up based on your actions, that's going to determine whether unpleasant feeling arises in the first place. If you were to actually cultivate actions that are not suitable for the arising of suffering, even things that aroused displeasure before would not perturb the mind or even lead to the happiness of renunciation. As the suttas would describe, like when the mind develops jhana, then rough robes, rough food or no food, living under a tree and just little to no medicine would feel factually like heavenly requisites. So you realize it's the exact same thing that would have before given rise to displeasure, because of the right choices that you've been cultivating, choices that were not suitable for the accumulation of craving, actually or diminish your craving. Now, there is no arising of suffering. So you can directly see then. So that's what it means to say that you're responsible. It's not about. Of course, it matters what you do in the moment, because in the moment that's where your direct input is. But the arising of suffering is determined by what you've cultivated. So from that point of view, then you realize because as the Buddha said, so craving is the root of suffering. But does that mean that you can, it's the same question that I asked before, does that mean that you can just, I've been doing whatever I want, not paying attention to my actions, but I have the direct insight of what craving is, so I just cut it off at the last moment?
No.
That's not possible, is
No.
it? So, because see, it's not you. Like, yes, you can, on top of the mind having craving, you can also act out of craving, which means you're making it worse. But fundamentally, what the Buddha means when he says craving is the root of suffering, it means a mind affected with craving is the root of suffering. Like the wild animal, as we were describing it in those a few discussions ago, maybe. It's whether you like it or not, basically. Experiencing certain situations with that type of mind will mean suffering is there.
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay between you on the one hand and mind. So mind can be calm, but if you then start behaving inappropriately, you will stir it up, but that's not immediately noticeable.
Yeah.
But at some point you will notice, and then you can calm down, but it will take then time again for the mind to calm down.
And how do you calm down?
Well,
It's by, first of all, you have to stop doing the things that led you to that.
Yeah.
You don't calm down by kind of putting out, I grab a perfect fire extinguisher, but I continue to throw wood on the fire.
yeah. So then the responsibility, which was the original question, the responsibility is on what you do, but depending on, let's say, how pliable the mind is, or on how well it has been tamed and hence listens to you, there will be somewhat of a delay. But when you go in the wrong direction and you agitate that mind, then you will suffer on account of it. So if you keep that distinction between you and mind, you can see how there can be responsibility and how that is not in conflict with a mind that suffers. So the whole point is, of course, to tame the mind in such a way that it cannot become agitated again on account of you, first of all, being restrained, and then the mind understanding that it is better off if it is tamed and trained, and then it doesn't want to go back anymore.
Yeah.
That will be the, let's say, final result of all of this.
Yeah, and that brings us to one point that I was thinking about bringing up, but actually this is a good context to do it in, because sometimes there's this idea that you should that if you, let's say, try to incline towards seclusion, and you don't really interact with people, and you don't really go out into the world, then you're just running away, and you're not really kind of developing yourself. So you actually have to expose yourself to the temptations in order to build up your ability to kind of not be moved by them, let's say. So, in light of what we've been discussing now,
What's wrong with
what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
Well, that is true for an arahat, but for someone that is already affected by craving, the circumstances do matter, because otherwise he will just expose himself to things that agitate the mind, regardless of what he thinks on top of it.
Yeah. So that's one angle you can look at it. It's like, well, it's not about it's not about whether I'm able to not act out. It's about what am I inclining the mind towards simply by putting myself in this environment. But more acutely, what is the why is it wrong, basically? Why is it seclusion the ideal and not why specifically seclusion?
Well, something that comes to mind is it's not like the mind will suddenly be tamed by, or like the problem of an untamed mind will disappear in seclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that will be more revealed.
Yep.
So you would still have to learn how to train it.
Yep.
In seclusion, and probably have a better perspective on that training.
Yeah.
Than you would when you're still in contact with many of the things that which led to an untrained mind.
But what would be the training that you would do in seclusion that you cannot do when you're just in front of the temptations? Because that's true, it will reveal the training you have to do. But what is the training? And why can it only be done in seclusion?
I think first we should clarify what seclusion is. Because seclusion is not that at the beginning you can just go to solitude and say that you practice seclusion. Because seclusion is a particular step in the gradual training. So
yeah, of course. So that has to be
developed.
that
Already required to go to the seclusion.
That has to be kind of covered. Like you don't jump into seclusion when you're still not able to keep the precepts. But let's say somebody did establish themselves in the precepts, did become proficient in sense restraint, but now they start to feel like, okay, but see, if I now go into seclusion, I'm actually not developing myself. I have to go out to test myself, that I'm actually able to keep the precepts in every situation. So in that scenario, why is it that actually the seclusion is what would allow them to tame their minds properly, in light of what we've been saying, that it's the suffering that you're responsible for based on your actions?
Yeah, well, you see, the thing is this. In seclusion, what comes with the seclusion is that there's basically nothing to do. So that means that when you are doing things, you are now in a position to see whether it is that untamed mind pushing you to do it or not. Because there's basically nothing else there but you and your mind. If you are not in seclusion and there's other people and hence interaction or things to be done in the world, including resisting the temptations that you want to test yourself against, you are not now going to see what is motivating you to do something, if that's coming from that mind pressuring you or random circumstances that you are reacting to. That's now the difference there.
Yeah, so, but let's say specifically in regard to the precepts, let's say I'm training myself to never break the precepts. So if I think I need to go out there and experience this pressure to break the precept to make sure that I don't break it.
Yeah, but that is already a lopsided view on what the whole purpose of the precepts are.
Yeah, but right? why is it that's only in seclusion? Seclusion would make you unable to break the precepts, not going out into the world.
Well, because as I said earlier, then you will see, because as you said in earlier talks, the whole point of these precepts is precisely to show you what your mind is up to. And that is what you're going to see in seclusion.
Exactly. So in relation to the precepts specifically, what will happen in regard to the mind?
Well, you see, if somebody has some basic training in keeping the precepts externally, what you will now practically discover is that there is a lot of room in between those precepts where you are clear, I'm not breaking these precepts. But if you have understood that those precepts are not just there in order to not be broken, but to basically turn your attention around in order to see what the actual intentions are, that is now what you're going to see in seclusion. So that you can refine that same principle and basically pick up those hints and signs of the mind, because that's the level where the purification happens. So the whole direction of your investigation is in that opposite direction of worldly temptations, which will always be there.
Yeah. So, but what would be the signs of what signs of what would you be picking up?
Well, of the mind.
Yeah, the mind, but the mind doing what?
Well, the mind basically resisting that space where nothing needs to happen, for example. So, which will manifest in hindrances or boredom or loneliness or doubt or basically all of that, which you're going to just overlook if there are other people or the strange idea that you
need to go out and
this whole notion that you want to test not breaking the precepts is itself already your mind pushing you from a very strange angle. So you want to not even go down that road. But just assuming that, right? Because that was the question.
So even more specifically, is like, what would your mind be doing in seclusion? Let's say you just got used to keeping the precepts externally, you don't really break them. What would the mind be doing?
Kicking and screaming.
Yeah, but to what?
To you, putting pressure on you to start doing things.
Yes, but to start doing what?
To get rid of unpleasant feelings.
What will the mind be? Let's give a hint. What will the mind be thinking about? Somebody who just established the precepts.
Sensuality, aversion.
Well, it would. Yeah, so it will be thinking about breaking the precepts. So, in other words,
oh right, I see.
When you just establish yourself externally, unless you're distracting yourself with other stuff, if you're actually in seclusion, with some degree of space to be aware of your own mind, as you were saying, what you will practically find, not always, but sometimes, what you will find is that the mind will incline towards those very thoughts that are in line with what you externally don't, that are against with what you now externally don't do. So, yeah, thoughts of sensuality, thoughts of the things that you have abandoned. And see, based on what you do there in seclusion, you will be responsible for the pressure, the dissatisfaction, the pain that will come up when you go out there in the world and encounter things. If in seclusion you have developed yourself properly and you have not been welcoming thoughts of breaking the precepts, thoughts that kind of push you in that direction, then when you go out, your mind will not be experiencing the temptation in the first place. There will not be pain on account of not doing those things. So when you go out into the world and you experience kind of pressure and to do those things specifically to break the precepts, you might experience random agitations and other things because the mind is untamed. But if you were specifically feeling pressure in that direction, it's because mentally you haven't fully pulled the mind back, and sometimes you still, when the mind kind of wants to think about it, you still kind of allow it to at least mentally welcome that direction. So when you basically do that, like that practice where you go out and expose yourself to temptations, what you're really doing is training your willpower. And willpower has nothing to do with like taming the mind. It's even, I think the scientist or neurologist or something recognize that willpower is a limited resource. It's like if you spend all your willpower in a very hard thing in the morning, then by the evening you're much more likely to just kind of
fall asleep,
give in or any kind of just go for the low effort alternative in everything that comes up. So you don't want to be relying on willpower, and training your willpower. It's dependent on very impermanent conditions like motivation, inspiration, and that's not what the tamed mind is actually. What actually is tamed mind is, I don't experience desire to do this in the first place. So that's why then in seclusion, if you take responsibility, even for these mental actions, like never on any occasion, for no reason, do you allow yourself to welcome thoughts of breaking the precepts, like delighting in it, even if I'm not specifically planning to do it, then you won't experience that pain will not come about, that dukkha will not come about on account of not breaking the precepts. And that's how you become established. Because you can spend the whole life externally not doing those things, but that's like, just take a child who kind of didn't go through puberty or something and just lived his whole life like that. He would probably find it pretty easy not to break the precepts, but does that mean that he is actually developed that's that simile of the newborn child that the Buddha gave. It's like if just on account of not doing these things you were to be considered a samana, then a newborn baby is like the foremost samana, because he's like doesn't even know what those things are.
Doesn't have thoughts of sensuality.
Yeah.
Doesn't even know other
what
beings.
sensuality is.
So how can it be angry if it doesn't understand what other beings are, and so on.
Yeah.
So it's not just about. So your point is just not just about keeping the precepts externally and not breaking them.
Yeah. It's about devaluing that direction internally on the level of whether you allow delight to occur toward those things. And that delight, you can only see it, as you were saying, like seeing those signs, recognizing those inclinations of the mind, that only becomes apparent in seclusion.
Yeah.
So quite contrary, well, the problem often is like when people go into seclusion, they would think it's just about kind of going on vacation from the problems and just forgetting about everything, which kind of ties in with the whole view of what people think meditation is. But no, it's like if you go in seclusion properly, practically speaking, unless you're jhana, that's what's going to be happening. Like your mind is going to be throwing these baits at you, and you will have to be on guard, because you could easily take one of them, and that's how you're keeping that connection.
Yeah, and here we can also make a further distinction between bodily and mental seclusion. So bodily seclusion is to not have other people around and to just be on your own for most of the day, nobody to talk to and so on. But then if you still on the mental level welcome, let's say thoughts of sensuality or other things, then you are bodily secluded, but mentally you're not secluded.
Yeah, the Buddha said you have a companion if you have craving.
Yeah, companion quote. Well, exactly, yeah. Companion quote unquote. So when that craving is seen as is recognized more precisely as welcoming and delighting in those thoughts, or alternatively resisting them and wanting to get rid of them, so you don't do either. And so then you don't have craving as a companion. That would be the mental seclusion.
Yeah.
But that mental seclusion, because that's now another view, which I have actually heard, that people say, yeah, well, the highest one is the mental seclusion, so let's just go and sit in morning and evening pujas together and develop mental seclusion. Mm-hmm. Well, but that's not now how it works. Yeah. So you first have to be quite okay with yourself in the bodily seclusion, and then recognize that is a stepping stone to train your mind to become mentally secluded from an awesome state.
Yeah, so that's how always the suttas would describe it. It's like, yes, they would sometimes mention, okay, there's the higher mental seclusion, but when it comes to the training, it would always describe first, a monk seeks out physical seclusion,
exactly,
on the basis of which he develops mental seclusion.
Yeah.
So now...
there's also that sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, which talks about being developed in body, developed in mind. Is that along the same lines, like in terms of feeling, bodily feeling, being developed in mental?
Yeah,
like
it says
37 or something.
Yeah, 36. 36. It says so that you're developed in body when pleasure arises, the mind is not occupied and not taken by that pleasure, and you're developed in mind when pain arises, the mind is not occupied by pain and suffering. But see, the critical thing to recognize there is, like, experientially speaking, if the mind is not taken by it, if the mind is not preoccupied by it, practically speaking, it's not suffering. So it's just like an unpleasant circumstance, like I said before. So suffering is not determined by the external condition, it's determined by whether internally there is that dissonance or sense of that you're basically losing something. And of course, the only way that that's going to be there is if there's craving. If you needed or desire it to be otherwise, then that's the automatic pain is the automatic result. So, but again, it's that mind that's put into that state of craving or taken away from it by the things that you do. It's not like a choice of just, okay, I'll just be equanimous and be okay with the moment. Well, you needed to be equanimous yesterday and the day before and 7 days ago. When you were engaging in unwholesome things, that's when you had to be equanimous, not at the last moment.
Yeah, you have to be equanimous by not engaging
Exactly.
with those unwholesome things.
Exactly. Yeah. So, otherwise you're just practicing like damage control. Like just, okay, the house is on fire, and success is putting out the fire, not preventing the house from getting burnt in the first place. So, now, having said all that, what do you do now? Let's say because you like, obviously there's a limit to that. Like, you will be not engaging, you will be pure in your conduct, at least as far as you can see. And sometimes dissatisfaction will still arise. Like, you will reflect and you will see, okay, have I done something wrong? Have I broken any precepts? Have I delighted in unwholesome things? And as far as you can see, you haven't. And yet still the mind is going to be experiencing dukkha. Which, okay, does that mean that it randomly arose now? No. Of course, from a theoretical point of view, yes, that dukkha wouldn't have arisen if you were fully developed, so you're responsible for it. But there is a way out. There is a way that you could develop yourself without giving up responsibility for the fact that, well, that suffering shouldn't be there in the first place, without falling into management, in other words. You could at least re-establish yourself in a way that you will wear away the conditions for that suffering to be there. So what would be that thing that you can do? If your conduct is not in check, then you need to look at that first, because otherwise, again, you can't throw water in a raging fire. You have to just not have it be there. But now, let's say that's covered. What can you do to let's say rectify the situation?
So the situation is just to recap, like, your conduct, your precept, as far as you can see, is okay, but you still somehow suffer.
Yeah.
For some.
Yeah. You're in seclusion and
you suffer.
You're not doing anything bad. You're not thinking any unwholesome thoughts, but still there's that kind of uneasiness and sense of something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing specific, just kind of.
So then what to do?
Yeah.
See the pressure of something wrong.
Mm-hmm. And
this own.
But what's the, what would that be like? Because if you just look at the pressure, that could be interpreted in different ways. But how would you explain it in the most accurate way? Like being aware of the pressure.
It's felt.
Mm-hmm.
It's not some acute, painful feeling, but it's like more like uneasiness.
Mm-hmm.
Even without anything particular happening.
Mm-hmm. And but is that it? Do you see that pressure, or is there something else that you shouldn't lose sight of?
Not distracting myself from that uneasiness.
Mm-hmm.
Not searching for any even slightest seemingly even not unwholesome activity.
Mm-hmm.
I think what kind of need to be recognized there is that peace comes from like recognizing things as they are and not engaging with them.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing like this relationship with whatever arises,
Mm-hmm.
not in trying to change the things. And that's the difficulty, is to stay with what's there, and while this difficulty is happening, finding that peace actually comes from not interfering with it.
So can you just choose not to not interfere?
Cannot choose.
Or is there a specific way that you become unable to interfere with things even if you want to interfere with them? Is there something that you have to see, or do you just decide not to interfere?
As I said, just see this pressure as a whole.
Yes, that's
experience.
Yes, but how do you see the pressure?
Well, okay, no, you see the pressure, but is that the whole picture? Is that all there is?
Yeah, no. So this is what I'm asking. So you can say just see the pressure, but there are other ways in which you can see the pressure. So
yeah, because see, if you only see the pressure, then you can. I hope I'm not giving away too much hints now. If you only see the pressure, you could basically become overly kind of. You could actually, practically speaking, you could lose perspective over your experience, because see, that now becomes like a particular thing that you're concerned about, and even though initially maybe you recognize the pressure, you can still.
So you can recognize the pressure, but with the intention of trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't recognize still, it's rooted, me watching the pressure and looking at it and contemplating it is rooted in trying to get rid of it. So how do you keep the pressure where it is and without interfering with it?
Yeah.
And
that's the answer, isn't it?
No,
the intention part.
There is something more specific still, which nobody has yet said. We did actually discuss it already, I think, in a previous talk. If we're talking about the same thing.
Well, I'm not going to give too many hints, but I think afterwards.
Yeah, okay. So, look, if that pressure is owned, and if that mind is seen as yours, then you will not have the right perspective on it.
Yes, and how do you disown things?
No, but let's first establish that is the way that it should be regarded. So yeah, so then how do you disown things? That's on the next question.
Yeah.
Because, once you have understood it, like what disowning is, yeah, you can use directly, okay, I disown this. But that's not how you start, so there's a...
So how you start is by recognizing that anything that you now want to do about that pressure, that can only happen when you have already owned the pressure and regarded it as yours. So you basically have to endure that pressure, which will eventually, if you do it rightly in the context that we have sketched, will result in the insight that, wait, there is that pressure, it's real as such, as we often say, but it's now not yours.
Yeah.
And at some point, that distinction between mind which is pressuring you and you, that will become fully clear. What then happens with what we now call you? Okay, that can now be a next topic.
Yeah.
But that line becomes very clear, and then also that will also practically now answer the question of where is your responsibility and where it isn't. So you will no longer be over or undershooting. In other words, you understand now the middle.
Yeah, all that's quite correct, but there's a specific way that you endure things, because again, like if you have grasped the signs of what enduring means, then you can just say, I'll endure this, and you're rightly enduring it. But without that perspective being fully established, there's a specific way for you to endure things properly.
Still, I guess the way of there's a specific way is kind of okay, so I can do something to deal with this.
Well, in a way, if you understand it rightly, it is the thing that you have to do, but then you realize it's not really a doing.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, it's that if there's this unpleasantness, so, well, what can I do about it?
Is it something you can recognize without losing sight of...
Well, have I recognized it?
Can I try another direction?
Yeah.
So, okay, there is this pressure there, and I can experience this pressure only because the body is sitting there right now. And by including these two kind of things, which are like two different perspectives on the same aspect of the experience, well then it's quite clear that me, quote unquote, that I put in between in order to make the link in between of these two. It's just because I keep overlooking that there is these 2 points of view.
Yeah. So what are you doing what are you contemplating when you recognize that?
Well, that even if
the Buddha gave it a very specific name.
Yeah, I know, but like even if I want to like own one of them, one depends on the other, so it's kind of obvious. I mean, when you recognize that, it's kind of obvious that even if you want, you cannot do anything.
Yeah. So see, that's what I was aiming at when you brought up like, you can recognize the pressure in and of itself, but there's a reason why the Buddha wasn't saying just look at one thing. There's a reason why he talked about recognizing the relationship, the simultaneous relationship between two things.
I never finished my sentence, so yes, I was trying to say that at the moment, simultaneously, with seeing the pressure, that very uneasiness of the pressure simultaneously becoming pleasant, basically. So I was trying to tell just that.
That can be a way to look at it. Like, sure, you can contemplate pressure and feeling, but practically speaking, I think for most people, what you just said now would be more kind of palpable. Like, okay, regardless of the pressure I'm experiencing, can I see something that isn't, let's say, directly related to that pressure? Because if you kind of boil it down, okay, just that pressure, and try to recognize the different aspects of it, you might easily just
make it an object again, and which is the loss of the perspective.
Exactly. So if you keep it on that level, like, okay, what is, I'm experiencing this pressure, but what else is there that would prevent me from becoming fully engaged with the pressure? As long as I don't lose sight of it, and you can say it's the body, you can say it's just the overall situation that you're in. Like sometimes the suttas would even talk about like the perception of the forest, and would say that if a monk develops perception of the forest, or perception of the great earth, his mind will become established in samadhi. So, like literally, just if you don't forget that, okay, I'm in this room right now. You don't try to like psychologize and make it any more specific than that. It's just a general recognition. Okay, this is where I am right now. You're not trying to feel your knees and you're kind of touching the floor or the sensation of coldness or heat. You're just a general recognition. I'm in this room, and then as long as you don't lose sight of that, you won't become fully identified, for the lack of a better word. Like you won't fully descend into that pressure. It will still be pressuring you. It will still be baiting you, but you will have basically something to hold on to. That like, okay, I know that as long as I don't need to define or worry about like what is the escape from this pressure and how do I get rid of it. All I need to be concerned about is I just don't forget these fundamental elements of my experience that remain unchanged regardless of what this pressure is doing, because it is going to be, we say pressure as if it's a static thing, but practically speaking it's the mind thinking about this and that, and of course revolving, well, for that matter, you could take the mood or the pressure of the mind as your background. You see that as a general phenomenon. Okay, this is the state that the mind is in, and then whatever thoughts about this or that happen to come up, because that's what defines the pressure. It's all these movements and worries and concerns. Then you don't get absorbed in those worries and concerns, because you know, okay, all of this is happening within this mind of doubt or anger, whatever it might be. And that's what you do, practically speaking, when all of your precepts and all of your conduct and all of your behavior is in check, and yet still there is suffering, because there will be. That's why it's a gradual training. It's not that, okay, I just established my conduct and I'm an arahant. But see, that's exactly why it comes at that point, because now it's like, okay, like there is no wood that I'm throwing on this fire, as far as I'm aware. So now I'm in a position to actually extinguish it in the proper way that won't be just kind of trying to cope with the damage that I myself created. And now then you realize it will lead to a very different kind of result, because now you will be, if you develop this principle rightly, you will be even more disinclined to break the precepts, to do anything rooted in greed, aversion, and delusion, because all of those things are precisely based on losing this perspective of basically the four satipatthana, the background phenomena of your experience. Greed, aversion, and delusion is that absorption into concerns and not recognizing the whole picture. And the reason why I brought that up partly is because I'm pretty sure people wouldn't realize why that sutta talks about paṭiccasamuppāda at the end. And in fact, I've seen people who talk about paṭiccasamuppāda as precisely justifying the view that you create your suffering. That it's like the karma that you create in the moment through your attention, and then paṭiccasamuppāda is like a cycle of or like a sequence of mental events that follow because of your direct kind of action. And the sutta is literally saying, no, it's not that you're the creator of your suffering. So, and so when the Buddha says this is kind of the view or the outlook through which you transcend all of these four wrong ways of looking at it. Like, if you don't see that, you're still liable to assume that you are directly responsible for it, that you can't get rid of it, or that it's because of something somebody else did to you that you're suffering, or that it's just happening because I ate this food today, so it's kind of randomly arisen. Unless you see that direct escape, quote unquote, of the noble method, as the Buddha called it, dependent origination, then that's why you will still be subject to those wrong views.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning because, like, kind of reading the sutta, it's kind of like, I mean, like easy to say, oh yeah, of course, like, I'm not creating this suffering, it's not random, it's not others, it's not both. But as you just say, like, as long as someone is still subject to suffering, to that extent, he doesn't see this principle, and he fall into one of this category. So I think it's like the sutta is not so much like trying to give you like the perfect answer, but actually encourage to contemplate if you are still suffering is because you fall into one of these four categories. Because,
well, if you still feel angry when anything happens to you on account of anybody, it's because fundamentally you still, to some extent, assume that the suffering arose because of them. When you feel helpless and frustrated and angry with yourself, it's because you think that you created your suffering. When you feel helpless as well, it's also because you think that it's randomly arisen at the very least.
Or anxious. Or anxiety. It's like
anxiety. Like you think that kind of something will kind of happen on its own that will just uproot all of my composure and things will just go downhill. All completely overlooking. No, it's like if there is no ignorance, as the paṭiccasamuppāda thing says, suffering cannot arise. Even if you want it to arise, even if other people do bad things to you, even if random events happen, suffering cannot arise if you don't have ignorance of paṭiccasamuppāda.
Another point I wanted to mention also. You mentioned willpower at some point. And I think it's how do you say, kind of good to make the distinction like in the line of everything that's been said, what's the difference between actually willpower and develop like limitless energy, as the sutta sometimes say, like limitless energy arising in you. And I think there is quite a distinction there also.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because willpower, as we just said, even scientists recognize willpower is not limitless. So that brings it back to the whole point that we mentioned, that it's all of the wholesome qualities and the unwholesome ones as well. They have their root in the mind, in the citta, not in what you intentionally do in this moment. So it's what you have been inclining the mind towards that becomes that becomes all of the awakening factors, all of the faculties, all of the things that basically, like, that's why noble disciples, for example, it's like they cannot do certain things. They cannot completely forget the Dhamma. They cannot kill. They can't kill an arahant, kill their mother, kill their father. They cannot lose their context, the perspective that they have developed, because it's not about them kind of being so on the ball and perfectly attentive all the time. It's about just the mind having been established, like a certain basis, certain framework that you built up, and then regardless of what you do, nothing can take that away, because it's become fully ingrained and settled in. So like same anagami, free from sensuality. It's not because like he's constantly thinking about, oh, this is dangerous, I shouldn't engage with this. Well, that's not freedom. It's like, even if you completely relax and throw your hands up in the air and just kick your legs up and drink tea or whatever, and just don't think about the Dhamma ever, the mind doesn't have those inclinations because it's been developed beforehand in that way. So then you realize limitless effort or limitless energy to not engage in these things, because the place from which the pressure actually came from, the mind, has no interest in those things anymore. So the effort is basically effortless. It's like, I don't need to keep telling it, like, oh, don't do that, like I did before. It just established in the opposite of that. So it's like, I don't need to touch it, basically. And then that's truly limitless energy, and you realize, because you see it for yourself, the benefit. Like, so it's a feedback loop. It's like, you teach your own mind, okay, look, like, you're not inclining towards this now. Do you realize how much better this is compared to everything that it was before? And once it fully understands that, then even the energy is like, not even limitless, is like, why do I need energy for it? That's when the Buddha said, like, you complete the work, nothing further needs to be done.